Support for I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere comes from listeners like you who support us through Patreon and Substack. Bonus material, thank you gifts, and more await at patreon.com/IHearOfSherlock and at ihearofsherlock.substack.com. And now you can enjoy some iHoes swag, mugs, notepads, and oval stickers, available in our store. Find it at ihearofsherlock.com/merchandise.
I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, episode 333. 75 years of the Sherlock Holmes Society of London.
I hear of Sherlock everywhere since you became astronomer.
In a world where it's always 1895, it's I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, a podcast for devotees of Mr. Sherlock Holmes, the world's first consulting detective.
I've heard of you before. You're Holmes the meddler, Holmes the busybody, Holmes the Scotland Yard Jack in office.
The game's afoot as we interview authors, editors, creators, and other prominent Sherlockians on various aspects of the great detective in popular culture.
As we go to press, sensational developments have been reported.
So join your hosts, Scott Monty and Bert Walder, as they talk about what's new in the world of Sherlock Holmes.
You couldn't have come at a better time!
I'm Bill Curtis. This is I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere. Now here are your hosts, Scott Monty and Bert Walder.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Bill Curtis. It's always a delight to be introduced by your bass tones. Yes, this is I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, the first podcast for Sherlock Holmes devotees where it's always 1895. I'm Scott Monty.
I'm Bert Walder.
And Bert, it is lovely to hear your, well, are you a baritone or a tenor?
Oh, no, but I've always fancied myself when I was younger for tenor singing, and I enjoyed it, and I could make a go of it. But no, I'm a baritone.
Okay.
On my way to bass. And then,
on your way to bass.
Below that, the basement. So.
Well, I'll give you a tenor for your baritone. Lend me a tenor.
I'll take it.
Oh, that's a nod to our friend
Ken Ludwig.
Yes.
Tony Award winner. Yeah.
Hand me a tenor. Lend me a tenor. Well, we're not here to talk about tenors or fivers, but we are here to talk with something that has to do with the number 75. We're here to talk to Ashley Mayo from the Sherlock Holmes Society of London, who is coordinating all of the activities going on in the Sherlock Holmes Society of London's 75th anniversary year. It's a really remarkable lineup, and Ashley is a remarkable individual because he's got more that he's working on under the hood, so to speak. What is it? How can you discover more? Well, stay tuned. We'd like to remind you, if you would like to support I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, you can do that by buying some of our merch. We have notepads and we have mugs. Of course, we have oval stickers you can put on your car, your computer, your refrigerator, or wherever you stick things. And if you would be so kind, you can join us on Patreon and on Substack. Those are ways to subscribe to the show and listen ad-free and hear content that no one else gets to hear. A little bit of exclusivity there on Patreon and Substack. Whatever way works for you, you go right ahead. It can be as little as $1 a month, but we do appreciate every single one of you who supports us. You are too numerous to name, but we see you out there. We see you listening with your AirPods in your ear, your cans over your head there, whether you're walking, gardening, cleaning around the house, commuting. We do appreciate being with you in those most intimate times. So thank you in advance. Well, we are strolling into, oh my goodness, it's the height of summer. The first half of July on the Sherlockian calendar, even though the summer looms large and people like to get out and enjoy the fresh air, there are also instances of getting out and enjoying other Sherlockians, whether it's virtually or in their physical company. And that's where the Sherlockian calendar helps out. So, Bert, take us into July.
July 1st, you will be transfixed, just as Sherlock Holmes's correspondence was transfixed with a knife in the mantelpiece, by a virtual meeting of the transfixed correspondents of Phoenix, Arizona. And Lauren Cerconi will tell you more.
And if you happen to be in New York City on that 1st of July, that is the first Wednesday of the month, which means it's Ash Wednesday. The adventuresses of Sherlock Holmes gather, and you can reach Shana Carter at ashweddinners@gmail.com.
And July 5th, the crew of the Bark Lone Star sets off for another cruise on the internet. Steve Mason can tell you more, and their website is dfw-sherlock.org.
If you are in Colorado, in the Denver area, don't neglect Dr. Watson's Neglected Patients. They have a lunch meeting. Derek Belanger is your contact, and you can find them at dwnp.com.
And put on your Burberries. July 7, Vancouver, British Columbia, the Stormy Petrels are having a study session. Sheldon Goldfarb can tell you more, and look at their website. It's thestormypetrels.com.
And if you have weathered the storm in Vancouver, then get on down to St. Louis on the 11th of July for the Parallel Case. They'll be hosting a meeting where they'll have a story discussion. You can find out more at their website and through Rob Nunn.
And in beautiful Detroit, Michigan, what a place. July 11th, the Ribston Pippins are having a dinner meeting, and our friend Regina Stinson, whom we've just seen, can tell you much more. And there's a website at ribston-pippins.com.
And that'll be a fun meeting to go to, because the story of the evening is the empty house. The May meeting of the Ribston Pippins left you on a bit of a cliffhanger with the final problem. So if you want to know how it turned out, go to that July 11th meeting. Well, there are many meetings to choose from throughout the Sherlockian calendar. Just go to sherlockiancalendar.com, and if you have an event of your own to add, get in touch with Ron Fish there on the website. Ashley Mayo is a long-standing and deeply dedicated member of the Sherlockian world, having joined the Sherlock Holmes Society of London in 1987. Over the years, he's played a vital role in the Society's leadership, serving on its council and acting as treasurer for a decade, a tenure marked by steady stewardship and a quiet devotion to the Society's affairs. He's also known to many readers as the editor of The Canon and the Journal, a scrapbook, a digital publication that reflects both his scholarly care and his affection for the finer details of the great detective's world. This year, he's at the center of a significant milestone, coordinating the Society's 75th anniversary celebrations. And in recognition of his contributions to the wider Sherlockian community, he was recently invested into the Baker Street Irregulars as the Capital and Counties Bank. Ashley Mayo, welcome to I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere.
Good afternoon.
Well, it is always a delight to speak to a non-American, to paraphrase Sherlock Holmes. You are joining us from where today?
From Winchester in Hampshire in southern England.
Oh, lovely. Lovely. Well, that seems like, right in the heart of all of the action. And we would really be interested in knowing when and where and how you first met Sherlock Holmes.
Well, I think it was when I was a young boy. I had been very ill, and one of my parents brought a set of the short stories from the local library, and having to be in bed, I just sat and read them. And from that point onwards, really, I've been a fan. And later in life, I was very fortunate in meeting some other Sherlockians and became a member of the Sherlock Holmes Society of London in 1987. And my first actual meeting with the Sherlock Holmes Society of London was at their annual dinner, which coincidentally was the centenary dinner for studying Scarlet. And I said coincidentally because obviously now the London Society is celebrating its 75th year in existence.
Well, that is quite the introduction to a Sherlockian society, to show up at the Houses of Parliament for the centenary of the creation of, or the introduction of, Sherlock Holmes to the world. I'm curious how you discovered other Sherlockians.
Well, I happened to be working with a gentleman called David Demant, who was a member, and he and I used to chat about it. And he said, are you doing anything at the weekend? I said, well, not particularly. He said, well, I've got a ticket for the dinner. I can't go. Do you want to have it? And one of the first people I met was one of David's great friends, who was Bernard Davis.
Oh, wow.
And Bernard spent the evening talking to me and telling me all the wonderful things that he knew about Sherlock Holmes. And, I was in awe of him, and I still am when I read his articles, the amount of minute detail he went to in checking train timetables and ordnance survey maps to ascertain where various different stories took place. So that was really my first introduction of meeting other fellow Sherlockians. Obviously, over the years, as I got more and more involved after our children started to grow up in the society, and I became a member of the council. And from then on, I was treasurer of the society for almost 10 years. So I got to meet a considerable number of people, either in person or by email or Zoom. And I think that's really how I got involved.
Well, that's really it's just amazing, to come in at that level. I can imagine you. Yeah, as mentioned, you were in awe of Bernard Davis. Boy, I would certainly be in awe of Bernard Davis. My goodness! And so, who was chair of the society at that point?
Oh my goodness! When I think it was. Oh, now who was it? Would it be? I think it was Howlett.
Oh, Tony Howlett.
Tony Howlett, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Could you know that completely stumped me? I was just trying to think. Although, yes, I think it was Tony Howlett.
Yeah. Well, and was Richard there? Richard Lancelin Green at that centenary?
He was around at that time, and subsequent to that, I have spent quite a lot of time in Portsmouth, where Richard Lancelin Green's collection is. Where I helped go through Richard's papers when he donated them all to the library, which is now the Conan Doyle collection, but the Richard Lancelin Green collection. So they were all there, and I met them very fleetingly, but it wasn't until later life that I got to know a number of the others, Nick Utechin and Roger Johnson, far more intimately. From that point.
Wow, some real legends in the Sherlockian world. For as legendary as our little hobby can be. So as you joined the society, obviously the annual event at the Houses of Parliament is a fairly big deal. What other things attracted your interest and attention as you grew into your leadership roles there and took more responsibility for the group?
Well, I think overall, I always believed in scholarship. I've always felt that often people write articles and sometimes they're not properly understood. But I've always been scholarship has always been one of the sort of the blocks. You know, I'm one of those people who want to know more about things. You know, you read a story and a certain thing occurs, or a certain event or something, and I'm one of those people who want to know more about those things. And that was really why I, quite a few years ago, started the journal, the canon and the journal, the Scrapbook, because I believed the journal of the Society, of the Sherlock Holmes Society of London, is one of the great founts of Sherlockian research, as is the Baker Street Journal. But what really I felt was missing was that if you read a story, where would you find the research that went on behind it? Firstly, it appeared that you would need a complete set of the Sherlock Holmes journals from the 1950s onwards. And you would need to read them all. And also, authors being authors, very rarely put in the title the name of the story that they're going to talk about. So what I did, I firstly obtained a complete set, electronically and in paper, of all of the journals. And I read them. And that took me, I suppose, a couple of years. The early journals I had to retype because they were Xeroxed off and were a bit sort of higgledy-piggledy. And I read through them all and identified all the articles which I felt were worthy of inclusion into some form of publication. As I said, that took me about nearly 3 years, and I put all of the articles into various folders to the stories. And then I realised, actually, I hadn't solved any problem whatsoever. All I had done was just put things into buckets, so to speak. So I then went through all of those folders and split them out into other folders. I mean, you have to remember that within the Scrapbook, for The Hound of the Baskervilles and Study in Scarlet, there are over 200 articles each for those two stories.
Wow.
So I then realised what I had was a story with a huge appendix, which really was of no relevance to anybody. So my next step was to go through each of the stories again and put in footnotes, my own footnotes, for every individual story, relating it through to the specific article which was in the appendix. And that took me about another 2 years to do. And I also set up an index which has the title of the article, the author, but also the stories or the folders it relates to, and also the journal number. And every year now, twice a year, I update this when the Society's journals are published. And we're currently looking at about 1,300 articles in the Scrapbook. So my aim really was for any reader, be it somebody who is approaching Holmes for the first time, or someone who has a well-established record in Holmesian research, could go to any story and find all the research articles that have been written about it within the Society's journal. And also, I then had to split out into various other folders, things like Sherlock Holmes background. There's a folder on Dr. Watson's wounds, and I do say plural on that because he wasn't quite sure whether he had one or two wounds. But anyway, and weapons, tobacco and drugs, which university. It's a vast, extensive, I suppose, network of articles where anybody who wishes to find out virtually anything that has been published in the Society's journal can go and find it and hopefully make their appreciation of Sherlock Holmes and Watson that much greater.
Wow. Wow.
Wow is one way of describing it.
Yeah.
At one point, I did think it was becoming more and more of an albatross around my neck, but
well, look, like anything, like any large undertaking, it's really those first steps of organizing everything. And I think now that you've set up this structure and done, the majority of the work here, you have a framework that can be continued for years to come. Whomever ends up taking over the responsibilities of the scrapbook somewhere down the line. And Bert, I do have to say, in looking at the scrapbook, which, by the way, is publicly accessible for everyone, it is on the Sherlock Holmes Society of London's website. We will have a link in the show notes to this, but if you are curious, in the meantime, it can be found at sherlock-holmes.org.uk/scrapbook, or just search the site for Scrapbook, and it should get you there. And it, as you say, it's a variety of folders on Dropbox. And Bert, this would seem to provide us with topics for trifles for decades to come. So brace yourself.
Well, I have just started to reread it myself because when you are compiling this, you often don't read the completely finished article. And yes, I mean, even now I'm finding ideas, thoughts. Part of the 75th celebration, which we obviously will come on to in a little while, is I'm organising a symposium of speakers over a September weekend. And various ideas have come up. For example, the three violets in the stories. Who were they really? And the colonels. There's various avenues still that really we've got to go down and look far more closely into. As I said, that the Hound and Study in Scarlet, over 200 articles each. But then if you go down to things like the Beryl Coronet, maybe half a dozen. Now, I'm not suggesting that the Beryl Coronet is anywhere on the same level of a story as the Hound or Speckled Band, but there are avenues there still for new Sherlockian research.
Well, the wonderful and extraordinarily valuable aspect of this is you. It's the notion that you had, which I think is. And it's easy not to just to sort of gloss over it, but I think it's very insightful. And what I mean is that it's and you are sort of modestly presenting this as a personal selection, and a scrapbook, which I love because it's, makes it much more accessible to the average person, including someone who's not yet explored the path of Sherlockian scholarship. But the value you bring to this is that you have been a grand filter for this. And unlike an ordinary index, I mean, let's say for the sake of argument that computers crunched overnight and produced a huge index to the Sherlock Holmes journal, it's not a question of looking up a train, where was a train mentioned, the word train, where did that appear? And here are all the page numbers. Good luck. Have fun. But you've done this sort of analysis and frame it for the person who's inquiring about this. And I'm very sensitive to it because I've just finished editing a book about the Devil's Foot, and one of the things I wanted to do for my authors was to show them what had been written already. And, for some of these stories, a lot of things have really been gone into in great detail. Well, I had to go through myself all of the Baker Street journals and the Sherlock Holmes Society of London journals that I have, and find what I thought to be, the most relevant articles, and then make them all available to people so that they knew these things had already been covered. And that's really what you've done here. And it's just really invaluable, and it's enormous, and talking to you, you say, you rather modestly say, well, that took me, 2 years. I mean, this is absolutely enormous, so I'm just looking at the Devil's Foot, and very valuable. There's a line here in the Devil's Foot. It's early in the case. Watson says, "We'd taken tea at the vicarage and had come to know Mr. Mortimer Tregennis, an independent gentleman, who increased the clergyman's scanty resources by taking rooms in his large straggling house." 10, and you look down. So I'm starting in the story, and now I go down to your footnote about that. And what do we have here? We have, you're relating to what's going on earlier in the paragraph. Holmes's fees, you say, are never really fully defined. Here, the joint clients might be Mortimer Tregennis and the vicar, although no fees are openly discussed. So you've looked at this through the lens of, you know what this is? This is a client meeting, isn't it? I wonder how that relates to other things. And then, you relate that to My Charges on a Fixed Scale, written by Harbottle and Robertson in Baker Street Finance, provides further information. And by the way, here's the folder. You say both articles can be found right here. This is like having you sort of by the side of the reader saying, well, if that interests you, let me tell you where to look. And, in a way, that's a remarkable parallel to what's going on in artificial intelligence. Except I must say that the confidence I would have in your judgment is far superior to the confidence that I would have if I asked ChatGPT or one of these things, say, where were Holmes's fees mentioned? I wouldn't be getting out my pencil to write down that answer.
Well, I mean, Michael Homer, who you used me as well because he has just published, or the Utah University published, a new annotated study in Scarlet. And he was quite happy. He was quite happy to send me the text, and I went through and we put one or two extra editions. But Mike's done a fantastic job because he's written it also from the point of the Mormons, which, again, is a sort of rather nebulous area in the middle of the story, which perhaps needed his research to help sort of make us understand really what was going on. But yeah, I mean, I as I said, all I really set out to do was that if somebody, one of my grandchildren, was to sit down and say, at school they were going to study the speckled bam, which comes around, and I could say, well, look, if you want to read the story, fine, but if you want to find out a little bit more whether a swamp adder actually really existed, or whether snakes do actually listen to whistles, or whether they drink milk, this is where you can go and have a look. So I mean, and I intend, as long as I can, to keep updating the scrapbook. The thing is, of course, you update the articles, then you've got to go through everything and make sure that you've updated all the footnotes as well. So it usually takes me a couple of weeks after each journal comes out. But, I suppose I was going to say it's a work of love or a work of hate. I'm not quite sure which one it is, but I'm hopeful that people appreciate it and can use it and get as much enjoyment out of it as I got in effect putting it together.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. And because you are a glutton for punishment, you have decided to take on the responsibility for organizing the 75th anniversary year activities for the Sherlock Holmes Society of London. And
could I just correct you there?
Sure.
I'm taken on the role of coordinating.
Understood.
All the
yes.
other thing. I haven't, because that would be a terrible slur on all the other people who've been grafting away doing lots of other things, to suggest that it was Ashley Mayo, superhero, was going to run the whole thing. I have done a fair bit, but not as I haven't done it all, put it that way.
Believe
much has
me,
been done without me.
I understand completely. We just celebrated our 80th anniversary of the Amateur Mendicant Society of Detroit over the weekend, and it even in one small event, there were a cast of characters involved. Certainly, no one-man band taking responsibility. So I am with you on that.
Excellent.
And, well, what strikes me, and we'll let you talk about the lineup in just a moment here. What strikes me is the variety of events that are planned, not just on one weekend or over the course of one excursion. This is a true celebration that is going on throughout the entire year of 2026. So help us understand the thinking that went into this, the team that was assembled, the variety of events that are available, and how people might be able to get involved.
Okay, well, if we can just take a step back, when you said the variety of events, the society in a normal year would kick off in January with its annual dinner. Then in March would have a meeting where we would have a speaker. We have a London weekend, which we call in May, which usually starts on the Thursday, where we have the annual general meeting and we go through all the accounts and a speaker, and then various activities over that weekend. And then an autumn excursion come September, and a film night in October and November, and also we have the Richard Lancelin Green towards the end lecture towards the end of the year. So in effect, we had a structure there. What we've tried to do is to give it more of a tilt to give it the ethos of the 75th anniversary. For example, at the annual dinner, I and a number of people had liaised with the Royal Academy of Music in London because the Society sponsored a composition competition. Sorry, put my teeth back in it. And that was won by a very gifted student called Eric Davis, and he composed a piece of music called Scarlet Airs. And that was performed for the first time at the annual dinner, and will also be performed at the London weekend. And we're just in finalising agreements with music publishers so that we can publish the not only the score but also the actual piece of music audio-wise as well. We also have a lady called Amy Buckley, who has organised a short story competition for young people on detectives in schools. And this week, there is a weekend pilgrimage to Switzerland, to the Reichenbach Revisited, where those going will take on the roles and the costumes of members of the canon. And then over the May weekend, we have tea at the House of Lords. And on the Saturday, we have what is called, for the first time, a Sherlock showcase. And that is taking place at the Riverside Studios in Hammersmith in London. And we'll have speakers, Sir Chris Railing, Bonnie McBird will be there. There'll be a showing of Jeremy Brett's Naval Treaty, performance of Scarlet airs, as I mentioned, and various other activities. And then, from my perspective, as I mentioned earlier, in September at Madinley Hall, which is part of the University of Cambridge, we will have a weekend symposium where I've already had a number of people registering for that. The framework will be that we will arrive on the Friday, have dinner and a speaker. Saturday morning will be various presentations. In the afternoon, we're going to go to Cambridge Museum of Technology, which is built in an old Victorian pumping station. And a formal dinner in the evening with a speaker. And on the Sunday morning, again, a number of speakers and presentations. And we then have the film evening, which we would normally have, which may have a 75th tilt towards it. And it hasn't been announced yet, but there will be a very good speaker for the Richard Lancelyn Green lecture later in the year. So I also have just finished editing and compiling the Society's 75th anniversary book, which maps what the Society has been doing since the Festival of Britain days in 1951 through to the present day, and that's currently with the publishers, so should be available in May this year. So there we are. We have a wide variety of activities, and hopefully we will get a good response from members and non-members as well. That's partly why the Sherlockian showcase is there, is to attract non-members.
Yeah. Well, that's a remarkable. It's another lovely insight you've had there, which was, to step back and say, we have an active program. How can we overlay the 75th anniversary with these events and do something special this year and also attract new members? That's always a constant theme for organizations like ours around the world. And I think that's... Now, I did notice, though, there was one omission in your list. Perhaps I was not paying attention. But I did not hear you say that in honor of the 75th anniversary, that the Sherlock Holmes Society of London would be winning the cricket match against the Woodhouse Society.
Yes, sorry.
It must be an oversight on your part.
Sorry, I was trying to go through too many things. Yes, we have the annual cricket match, which is played to Victorian rules.
Yes.
And currently it is against the Golden Bats of the P.G. Woodhouse Society, and it's in a lovely little place in West Wickham and part of the National Trust, and it's a beautiful day out. But yes, Peter Horrocks would almost have my guts for garters, I think, for missing that one out.
Well, my concern was not that you didn't mention it, but you didn't mention that you were going to win, which is exactly what you must do in the 75th anniversary year.
Well, yes, it's customary that the opposition goes into bat first, so that the society at least can play for a draw, rather than getting annihilated in the first and only innings. But it's done in a tremendous sense of camaraderie.
Well, in this year it needs to be done with a tremendous sense of victory. I think you need to be perhaps putting something in the punch before the match begins.
Well, there is always that, yes. And
That
maybe,
sounds like something a Woodhouse story would begin with.
yes, that sounds like a Jeeves answer to Bertie Wooster's problem with his aunt.
That is marvelous. Now, just so our listeners are familiar, the Sherlock Holmes Society of London membership is open to anyone. Is that correct?
It is. As I used to say when I was treasurer, you pays your money and you can come in. So yes, it is open to members, anyone who wishes to join. We have over 1,000 members now around the world, not only the UK, but from Japan, Australia, India, and various other countries. And yes, if you pay your money, you can be. It is not like the BSI where you have to be invited to be a member. And I was extremely fortunate in being invited this year to become the Capital and Counties Bank member. But no, it is open to everybody.
Well, and I'm quite interested to know of the progress of building the transatlantic tunnel so Bert and I can commute over much more easily.
Yeah, with our bicycles, we'll cycle over.
Well, yeah, I mean, and maybe your president's going to, part of the reason the king is over there, maybe he's just going to be negotiating to take over the United Kingdom or something.
Oh, I like that. Okay.
I saw a news story on the internet before we actually started that someone has found a family link between Donald Trump and the royal family.
Wow. That is something.
Well, maybe he wants to become heir apparent to
It could be. Oh goodness. So, will you be heading on the excursion to Reichenbach?
No, I'm not going this.
Happening now,
I'm not going this year. No, I've got family commitments. I did go on the last pilgrimage, as we call it,
Yes.
to Switzerland, which lasted a week, and
Wow.
I was very lucky to portray Dr. Watson for the whole week, which was great.
So take us through what a pilgrimage to Reichenbach is like. What does it consist of, and what's required of the attendees?
Well, firstly, the attendees, through council and the organisers, need to determine who is going to be the major players. Who's going to be Holmes, who's going to be Watson, who's going to be Mycroft, and people like that. And then it's down to the rest of the cast, so to speak, to decide on an individual character they wish to do. I can only speak of my experience of the last one. We all arrived at Heathrow Airport in costume on a Sunday morning, much to the amazement of the not only the police who were there, but also all the other tourists and travellers. We caught a Swiss Air aeroplane to Geneva. And again, those fellow travellers who obviously didn't realise that this group of British eccentrics were going to be dressed up in Victorian costume, were going to be on the plane with them. We drove to Interlaken, where we stayed in a hotel, and we went on a boat trip to commemorate the death of Cardinal Tosca. We also went on the funicular railway up to the top of the Jungfrau. And of course, we also did the pilgrimage from Meiringen, where was our second point of staying, up to the Reichenbach Falls, and also to see the Sherlock Holmes Museum and the statue that John Doubleday had created in the Conan Doyle Square in Meiringen. And then we had various activities. We did parades and meeting various people, and we caught the train back to Geneva and home on the following Sunday.
Wow, that is quite the itinerary. And listeners, if you're hearing this now, you've just missed it.
Now,
Well, there will be another one, but it takes years to,
Of course.
not only to organise, but the big question is of sponsorship of getting Swiss Travel and Swiss Air and various cantons involved as well, because it's otherwise the cost can be absolutely astronomical.
Of course.
The Society also last year, Calvert, Markham and Peter Horrocks leading it, went to India.
Right, we remember that.
And saw the Red Fort and followed in the footsteps of a lot of the parts of Sign of Four.
Now, if I recall correctly about the trip to Switzerland, certainly this year and perhaps in prior years, not only are you traveling in Victorian costume, but you will be maintaining your character and costume for the length of the tour over multiple days, which requires multiple Victorian costumes, doesn't it?
It does, yes, because I was just thinking, I had three costumes. For Watson, I had a costume which was a frock coat and top hat rather, as well as my brown doctor's bag. I also had a tweed +4 suit, which was extremely helpful for climbing the stairs up to the Reichenbach, and also needed a white tie and tails for at least one of the dinners in the evening. But you're absolutely right. You are expected to stay in costume virtually from breakfast through to the time you go to bed.
Now I have to.
And maybe it's easier for some people just to sleep in the costume so that if they oversleep, they're ready in the morning.
Well, now you've touched on my real point of curiosity here, which is that if you're going through all this with these multiple costumes, when evening rolls about and you do go to sleep, do you sleep in a nightshirt?
Well, all I can say from personal experience, I did not. I have no data to ascertain whether any other member of the party had a nightshirt or not.
Well, Bert, let's just say nightcaps may have been involved.
Nightcaps. Well, the only way to have found out would have been to come to someone's room early in a cold morning with a candle and say, "Not a word, into your clothes and come. The game is afoot."
Absolutely. Or turn the fire alarm on at 2:00 in the morning. Neither of which would make you the best friend of anybody there.
Well, whether it is pulling fire alarms in the middle of the night with your fellow Sherlockians or attending a cricket match with rules of the game from 1895 or any of the other activities available in the 75th anniversary year of the Sherlock Holmes Society of London, and browsing through the scrapbook and the journal, the canon and the journal scrapbook, we highly recommend folks go to the Sherlock Holmes Society of London and check everything out. It's a fairly recently revamped website. I don't know if folks haven't been there in a year or so, if you would notice the difference, but it is fresh and inviting and easy to use, and we hope everybody has an opportunity to get involved in some way that is appropriate to them at some point throughout 2026 to celebrate 75 years of the Sherlock Holmes Society of London. Ashley, any last words of encouragement or wisdom for our listeners before we pop off?
No, I mean, basically, enjoy Sherlock Holmes. I shall be 70 next year. I've had a lifetime of enjoyment from it and met some absolutely wonderful people over the years, and look forward to hopefully many years more being involved.
Well said. Well, Ashley Mayo, thank you for joining us here on I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere.
Well, my pleasure, and thank you very much for having me.
Isn't it wonderful that after all of that and talking about the incredible agenda that exists for the Sherlock Holmes Society of London 75th, the trip to Switzerland with all the details, the scrapbook, which is just invaluable. And when you get to the end of all of that, you know, and as you did there, you know, you sort of say, Ashley, well, you know, try to sort of sum it all up, and if we covered everything, enjoy Sherlock Holmes.
That's it.
It's, and you know, and we hear this again and again and again and again and again when we talk to people, particularly long-term Sherlockians, and you touch on the subject of, you know, what do you enjoy and what's been special about all of this? It's the people. You know, enjoy Sherlock Holmes, and it's the people.
Well, and that's just it. You know, we have any variety of ways of enjoying Sherlock Holmes, whether it's, you know, watching something like Young Sherlock on Amazon Prime, or reading the stories, or showing up at events and traveling with people and playing sports with people, or just sitting alone in your study and working on scholarship. There's such a variety of ways to enjoy Sherlock Holmes. But I think for you and I, Bert, the key is really enjoying it in the company of others and sharing our enjoyment. You know, just like collectors like to share their possessions, I think we like to share our enjoyment with our fellow Sherlockians. Well, the month rolls on, and of course, as part of that, we examine some pictures with Christian Mungard, who has yet another delightful film review for us.
First we had young Sherlock Holmes, then we had the old Mr. Holmes, then young Sherlock again, and now we have Sherlock Jr., the 1924 silent film starring a sparkling Buster Keaton in the title role. My name is Christian Mungard, and this is Examining the Pictures. It's true that Sherlock Jr. only tangentially relates to the Sherlock Holmes we know from the stories by Dr. Watson, but the same can be said of many other films and TV shows that are supposedly based on the canon. I would argue, perhaps a bit cheekily, that Sherlock Jr. has much more of the original Master Detective's DNA in its bones than all of Guy Ritchie's Holmes films and shows combined. When we first meet Buster Keaton in Sherlock Jr., he is sitting in an empty cinema reading a book titled How to Be a Detective, a fake mustache perched on his upper lip. He is supposed to be sweeping the theater, and his boss is a bit cross when he finds him sitting there, dreaming of becoming a sleuth, wielding a magnifying glass. However, his reading comes in handy when he is framed for a crime committed by the Sheik, played by Ward Crane. The Sheik is a nefarious man vying for the hand of the same young lady, played by Catherine Maguire, our hero is in love with. The Sheik steals the girl's father's watch, and the father is played by Keaton's own father, Joe Keaton, and blames it on Keaton. Our hero decides to solve the case himself by following closely, very closely, in the footsteps of the Sheik, just as his book instructs. He fails to find anything and unhappily returns to work, falling asleep while projecting a film. Then the action really begins. Our intrepid hero dreams of entering the movie. He literally jumps into the screen, moving from one scenario to the next in one of the most ingenious moments in the cinema, both technically and artistically. It was all done in camera and it remains quite astonishing. In his dream, the young man imagines himself as the famous detective Sherlock Jr., with the girl, her father, and the sheik cast in the other roles. Now they all belong to high society, and when a valuable pearl necklace is stolen from the father's safe, they call upon Sherlock Jr. to solve the crime. The audience already knows that the theft was committed by the sheik and the family's butler, played by Irwin Connolly. And when Sherlock Jr. arrives, they try to kill him with both poison and an exploding number 13 billiard ball. It is a hilarious scene with the sheik and the butler jumping for their lives every time the detective takes a shot at the table. But Sherlock Jr. has seen through them. Much suspense, craziness and action ensue as he pursues the thieves while perched on the handlebars of a motorcycle driven by his own butler. Or is it Dr. Watson? For much of the chase, however, Sherlock Jr. doesn't notice that the driver has fallen off. He is alone, sitting on the handlebars of the wildly speeding two-wheeler. That is just one of the breathtaking set pieces in Sherlock Jr. It is an incredibly inventive film, full of the acrobatic stunts and brilliant visual gags one expects from a film directed by and starring the virtuoso of movement, Buster Keaton. His deadpan face is perfect for the double role of the detective and the scorned lover, trying to survive in a world that doesn't always want him to succeed. Let's hear a little clip from the film. Silly joke, couldn't resist. Sorry about that. Buster Keaton's detective is a short but more than worthy addition to the cinematic history of Sherlock Holmes. The way he examines the household when he first arrives is quite funny. He sticks his face right into theirs, trying to see if they are the culprits. And when he is caught by the criminals, who turn out to be a whole gang, he escapes by disguising himself as an old lady in the blink of an eye. Sherlock Holmes would appreciate both the speed and the inventiveness of Sherlock Jr. And when he a little bit later jumps through the stomach of another old lady, his sidekick in disguise, both Holmes and Watson's jaws would drop to the floor. It is a trick worthy of the great escapologist Houdini. With a runtime of only 45 minutes, Sherlock Jr. is a quick, entertaining and very pleasurable watch. You'll want to watch it again the moment it ends. It is a piece of genius filmmaking that has stayed fresh for 100 years and will likely never grow old. The same can be said of the stories of Holmes and Watson. Genius begets genius. If one doesn't own the film on physical media, though of course one should, Sherlock Jr. can be found on YouTube in an excellent restored version where one can truly admire the work of a great silent film star and his take on the famous detective. My name is Christian Mongard. This has been Examining the Pictures. Thank you for listening. I'll be back again soon.
You know, it really is worth pausing on here, Bert, because Christian does such a marvelous job in his assessment of these films and shows. And we continue to hear from our listeners about their appreciation for this segment. And folks, if you would like to let us know what you think about examining the pictures and what Christian is doing, feel free to reach out at comment@ihearofsherlock.com. Leave a comment on the platform of your choice, whatever works. But again, I'm just kind of hitting myself in the head wondering, why didn't we do this before?
Well, if you're doing that, why don't you move over and I'll take a few whacks at you too. I mean, yeah, I blame you. It's a lot easier to blame you than to blame myself. But you know, this is really, it's interesting because there's so many talented people in the world of Sherlock Holmes. And it's kind of a well-duh moment. My goodness, yes, why don't we get one of them to talk to us about their particular specialty and how it relates to Sherlock Holmes? And it's absolutely fabulous. The people I talk to, I bump into in Sherlockian events, uniformly have told me how, like you and me, how excited they are to have this element added to the program. And not only that, most people tell me, boy, I really agree with Christian. Boy, did he say that well. Yeah, so it's terrific.
Well, and even if there's controversy, if you don't agree with him, that's worth discussing too. Oh, those plucky little strings mean that, of course, it's time for everyone's favorite Sherlockian quiz program. That's right, it's Canonical Couplet, where we give you 2 lines of poetry and ask you to discern which Sherlock Holmes story we're talking about. Now, here is a little bit of a twist from our usual cadence here. You normally hear us recite the canonical couplet from the last episode, and then we bring out the prize wheel and reveal who the winner was. Well, we're not going to have a prize wheel or a winner this time in this episode because I was derelict in my editing duties and there was a delay in getting episode 332 out. So here's what we're going to do. You still have time to get in your answer to episode 332's canonical couplet, but we're going to give you another canonical couplet in this episode. So in episode 334, we will be announcing 2 winners, one from episode 332 and one from episode 333. That is this episode. And the deadline for both will be the same. Get your answers in by May 14th, 2026, in order to be eligible. So, Bert, I'm sorry to disappoint you. You won't have the opportunity to answer incorrectly this time.
Oh, that's a real shame.
I know. But you'll have two opportunities in the next episode.
Okay. Well, in that case, let me just say, Wisteria Lodge and the Reigate Squires. Ha, ha, ha.
You may be right. Who knows? Just out of a random chance. Yeah. Well, we'll give you a shot at this next one. The prize for this particular clue that we're going to give will be a set of coasters with the Sherlock Holmes Society of London's 75th anniversary logo on them. So you get a lovely set of 2 coasters, courtesy of the Sherlock Holmes Society of London and iHose, if you can answer this clue. Another case we'll never know, this time in Rotherhithe. Thanks to Mrs. Hudson, Watson helps Holmes back to life. If you know the answer to this episode's canonical couplet, put it in an email addressed to comment@ihearofsherlock.com with canonical couplet in the subject line. If you're selected from all of the correct answers, you will win. Good luck. Oh, goodness. I don't know about you, but I'm wiped after that year of Sherlock Holmes Society of London activities we discussed.
Yeah. Yeah, I just feel badly about missing them.
I know.
I wish I could get over there and participate. But boy, it's just brilliantly done, and it's a whole year of fun. Fabulous.
Yeah. Well, maybe if we get enough supporters on Substack and Patreon, we can relocate iHo's headquarters to England.
Oh, well,
to the
I'm
UK.
All in favor. I mean, I would think that even if we only get halfway, we could sort of go up to Newfoundland. Make a start. Sort of inch closer.
That could be good. Well, or Greenland. With any luck, we.
Greenland doesn't want to hear from Americans. Yeah.
Or maybe just a steamer across the North Atlantic, and we'll just kind of plant ourselves there.
Greenland's attitude when Americans land is, "Here's your hat. What's your hurry? Thanks for coming. Goodbye."
Okay. Oh, well, we don't have hats yet here at iHo's headquarters. Maybe that should be our next piece of merch. If you have a request of some piece of merch with the iHo's logo on it that you'd like to see, let us know. We'd be interested to hear from you.
You keep saying that. We're interested in suggestions. But still, look how long we've been doing this. Still,
yes,
there's no smoking jacket. There's no Fez. You know, anybody would think you thought there was no market for this stuff.
Anyone would be right. It is true. Well, however you'd like to get in touch with us, for whatever reason you'd like to get in touch with us, please. We are always delighted to hear from our listeners. We are comment at ihearofsherlock.com on the email. And, of course, don't forget to visit the website, ihearofsherlock.com. In the meantime, this is the appropriately attired Scott Monty.
And I'm the chilly as usual Bert Wolder.
Ooh, bundle up. And together, we say, the game's afoot.
The game's afoot.
You know, I'm afraid that in the pleasure of this conversation, I'm neglecting business of importance, which awaits me elsewhere.
Thank you for listening. Please be sure to join us again for the next episode of I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, the first podcast dedicated to Sherlock Holmes.
Goodbye, and good luck, and believe me to be, my dear fellow, very sincerely yours, Sherlock Holmes.